why do I chant mantra so much? Why do we sing so much? Because it has such a deep and lasting impact. It's like you're infusing like a kind of nectar in your veins, and the and that nectar is like the knowledge of the ultimate truth, and the energy starts to percolate through the different energy channels and chakras and things like that, and then they become illuminated, and literally the consciousness begins to widen and open and feel more expansive. And then it's way easier to have that contemplation. Oh, well, perhaps everything is God, or everything is the divine, or everything is the one, or everything is the self. It's much easier to remember it because you're starting to feel it more and more. And you're not just, let's say, feeling it in satsang, in a gathering like this, where, oh, I chanted it, no, that was a lovely experience, and then I go home and then I just become my worldly self. Like, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in people incorporating it into while they're eating dinner, right? So when I sit down to dinner and I'm looking at the food, I'm saying, wait a minute, the mind is translating this into food. This is only God. And then I chant the mantra, which I've spoken to people about, Tu Diyam Vasta Govinda Tupameva Samarpayat, which means what I'm offering to you is already yours. Meaning, the food isn't food. The food is God, or God's property. So my mind is starting to sort of like dissolve because it's not feeling as much separation between me and the food. You see what I mean? And chanting the mantra helps my mind to get into this space while I'm eating of not just gobbling up the food and saying, oh, I'm so hungry and I'm eating food. Because when you do that and you gobble up your food, you're saying to yourself, I'm separate from the food and I'm a person and I'm hungry. And so it really contracts your consciousness. So to be able to be very mindful throughout the day of one's activities and trying to invoke the presence throughout the day, not just in a gathering like this, really helps to bring the teachings alive on a daily basis. And then ultimately, you become a sort of living embodiment of the teachings because you're so infused with the light that you don't feel the separation between you and the rest of the cosmos. That's your living experience. That's why Christ said to the woman at the well, you know, you don't know who you're talking to, in a sense. Like, if you knew who was talking to you, then you would ask me for living water, so you could drink from the living water and then never have to come back to this well again. You'll never be thirsty again. Right? And that's so profound because the teachings that he's giving are eternal life, right? Your eternal being, rather than this body that's going to be dead soon. You might as well call it dead, because soon enough, tomorrow, the next day, it'll be dead and it'll be dust. So you might as well call it dead, like the living dead. He says, so here's the living water, so you can develop your eternal life, right? So drink from the water, which is him. He called it, and he also calls it the bread. He's the bread, right? It's like, because at that time, bread was the most crucial food that they ate. That's what people spent time most of the day, making, was bread. Bread was how you stayed alive. Everyone ate bread. That's why he called his body the bread, because he is the bread of life. And pretty much everyone on earth is so-called walking dead because they're in their mind and suffering, whereas he is the living water, and you drink and eat from him, and then you gain eternal life. So so symbolic, everything he's saying. And if people don't think about this deeply, they just think, oh, his what are you talking about? His body is made of bread. What his blood is wine? What are you talking about? Like very sort of superficial thinking, and that's why it's kind of funny how Nicodemus and I think it was Jerusalem, who was like one of the Pharisees, one of the top Pharisees, and when Christ says, you know, you have to die to be reborn again as spirit, and he's like, well, do you go back into your mother's womb? It's like he was clueless about spiritual things, and here was a man who was supposed to be the top spiritual person, or one of the top spiritual people in the entire city, and he didn't understand the concept of death, meaning you die, you're reborn as pure spirit, which is there's no you there, you're just spirit. You know, like Christ called it like the wind. You know, you can't see the wind, and yet somehow there's a presence there. So he's trying to teach Nicodemus about the presence. And so if the highest religious person in the whole town, or one of the highest, doesn't understand spiritual teachings, I mean, how are people getting this?